A for putting my mother-in-law in her place when she tried to give away my house? The air on the patio of my house, or rather, our house in the exclusive Greenwood Hills subdivision, smelled of grilled salmon and conflict disguised as cordiality. It was the monthly family dinner, a ritual my mother-in-law, Evelyn, revered with almost religious fervor. I, Audrey, passed around trays of appetizers with a tense smile, feeling the gaze of my mother, Vivian, who didn't miss a detail from her chair. My husband, Mitchell, was talking about football with his brother-in-law, Trevor, while my sister-in-law, Alicia, laughed a little too loudly. Her son, Mason, a 17-year-old soon to turn 18, was engrossed in his phone, oblivious to the attention that always hung in the air at these gatherings. Evelyn, at the head of the table, her impeccable white hair shining, raised her glass of Prosecco. "My dears," she began with that sweet voice that always foreshadowed a blow. "Today is a special day. I want to announce something I've been pondering for some time, something that will make this family happy and secure the future of one of our own." We all stopped what we were doing. Mitchell shot me a quick, questioning glance. I stood still, the tray still in my hands. Evelyn smiled, directing her gaze to Mason. "My dear grandson, when you turn 18 next month, I want to give you something that symbolizes my love and my trust in you. Something that has been this family's home for so long." My stomach clenched. An icy premonition ran down my spine. "I want to give you this house," Evelyn declared with a triumphant tone. "This beautiful house will be yours to enjoy, to start your adult life with a solid roof over your head. A gift from your grandmother." The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant hum of a lawnmower. Mason looked up from his phone, stunned. The house, Grandma." "Yes, my love, this house," Evelyn confirmed, extending her arms as if presenting a kingdom. I felt the floor open up beneath my feet. 25 years. 25 years living here, caring for every corner, paying for every renovation, enduring her whims and her dominance. And now she was just going to give it away to Mason, to Alicia's son, as if Mitchell and I, as if I didn't exist. Rage, a hot blind torrent, rose in my throat. I dropped the tray on the table with a thud. "Excuse me." My voice sounded harsh, shrill. "Give away my house, our house?" "Audrey, please," Mitchell murmured, uncomfortable. "Please nothing." I exploded, pointing at Evelyn. 25 years living here, and now you decide it's no longer our home, that it's a toy to be given away. What right do you have?" Evelyn put on the face of an offended victim. "Audrey, darling, this house has always belonged to the family, and Mason is family. It's my wish, my gift." "Your wish?" I yelled, losing control. "And what about my wishes and Mitchell's? Do we not count? This is insane. I won't allow it." Alicia stood up defensively. "Audrey, it's a beautiful gesture from Mom. Don't ruin it with your selfishness. Mason is your nephew. That has nothing to do with it." The heat of the argument clouded my vision. I was about to say more, much more, to unearth every complaint, every injustice of the past 25 years. But then I saw my mother. Vivian hadn't moved. She was staring at me with a glacial calm. She didn't say a word, just held my gaze and, with an imperceptible shake of her head, ordered me to be silent. Her expression was clear. "Stop. Not now." The conflict paralyzed me. My rage fought against the blind trust one had always had in my mother's insight. I swallowed hard, choking back the poisonous words I wanted to spit out. My body trembled with contained indignation. "I think it's best we leave," Vivian said softly, standing up. Her voice was a balm of sanity in the madness. "Evelyn, it has been a revealing evening. Audrey, come." Evelyn looked satisfied, as if she had won the first battle. "Of course, Vivian. Audrey is clearly upset. She needs time to process the good news." Mitchell was pale, looking back and forth between his mother and me, trapped. "Mom, we should talk about this calmly." "It has all been talked about, son," Evelyn said firmly. "It's my decision." Vivian took my arm with surprising strength. "Let's go," she repeated in a tone that allowed no argument. I followed her, feeling the family stares on my back. Alicia's triumphant, Mason's confused, Evelyn's victorious, and Mitchell's helpless. The car ride to my mother's apartment in a more central part of the city was enveloped in a thick silence. The rage had given way to an internal tremor, a feeling of deep betrayal and absolute injustice. As we entered her cozy, tidy living room, the dam broke. "I can't believe it," I burst out, throwing my purse onto the sofa. "The old witch. 25 years, Mom. 25 years putting up with her in my house. And now, overnight, she decides it belongs to her golden grandson. And Mitchell, did you see him?" Not a word in my defense. Nothing. As always, tears of fury and humiliation welled in my eyes. "And you? Why did you stop me?" I should have given her a piece of my mind. Vivian went to the kitchen and put water on to boil for chamomile tea. Her movements were slow, deliberate. "Because Audrey, raising your voice and making a scene at that moment was exactly what she wanted," she said without turning around. Her voice was serene, analytical. "You would have lowered yourself to her level. You would have been the ungrateful daughter-in-law, the hysterical one who doesn't respect an old woman's wishes. And she, the generous grandmother, the poor victim." I sank into an armchair, defeated. "So what? We give up? We gift her the house and leave? After everything we've invested, everything I've endured?" Vivian came out of the kitchen with 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to me and sat down across from me. Her intelligent gray eyes scrutinized me. "Honey, in this life, and especially with a woman like Evelyn, brute force rarely wins. Only intelligence does. She has made a move, an emotional, family-based move. We cannot respond with emotions. We have to respond with facts." "What facts?" I asked, hopeless. "The house is in Mitchell's name, purchased after we were married. It's marital property. But if she pressures him, if she plays the sick, elderly mother card. Mitchell is weak when it comes to her, you know that." "Precisely," Vivian said, taking a sip of her tea. "That's why we have to look beyond the emotion of the gift. A gift like this isn't free, Audrey. It never is. Tell me, since Evelyn has been living with you, who has been responsible for the house's major expenses? The property tax, the repairs, the new furnace you installed 3 winters ago? Or the roof replacement after that big storm?" I blinked, a bit confused by the turn in the conversation. "Well, all of it, I suppose. It's our house. Mitchell and I pay for it." Though a memory struck me. The roof replacement was huge. Mitchell was having business problems that year. I used part of my inheritance from my grandmother, from my personal account, to cover the bill. It was faster. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Vivian's lips. "And the property tax, do you pay it from your account through direct debit?" "Yes, it's always more convenient," I admitted. "Mitchell handles other bills." "And the installation of the central air conditioning, and the pool repair last summer?" my mother pressed, like a lawyer leading a witness to a revelation. "I think so. Yes. A lot of things come out of my account. We have joint accounts, but sometimes to speed things up." "Where are you going with this, Mom?" Vivian set her mug down gently. "I'm getting at the fact that a real estate gift isn't just about handing over the keys. It comes with a history of expenses, taxes, and investments. Evelyn may want to give away the property, but is she also prepared to give away all the financial burden behind it? Or does she just want to gift the title, leaving you with the whole from everything you've put in?" A spark of understanding began to ignite in my mind, chasing away some of the fog of rage. I don't know." "Well, that's the first thing we need to know," Vivian said firmly. "Before you shout, before you fight with Mitchell, before you make any move, we need information. Concrete facts, paperwork, numbers. Not emotions. And how do we get that?" "Tomorrow," my mother said, and her tone took on a determination that felt familiar and comforting. "Tomorrow, instead of going to work, you're coming with me. We're going to pay a visit to the county records office. We are going to unearth the real history of that house. Dollar by dollar, invoice by invoice. Then, and only then, will we decide what to do." I looked at her, and for the first time since Evelyn's announcement, I felt I wasn't completely lost. It wasn't the calm of resignation, but the calm before a battle. "Do you think there's something we can use?" Vivian leaned forward, her gaze as sharp as a diamond. "Audrey, honey, in this country even a gift has its price. And sometimes the wrapping is prettier than what's inside. Tomorrow we'll find out." Then she added, her voice soft but relentless, And then we'll see who really has something to worry about. Trust me. Now is not the time to fight. It's the time to investigate and prepare a counterattack they can't dodge. I took a sip of the tea. It no longer tasted of desperation, but of a distant possibility, a strategy. The rage hadn't vanished, but now it had a channel, a direction. And leading the way was the serene and unshakable figure of my mother. I nodded. Okay, Mom. Tomorrow we investigate. My mother's apartment smelled of cleanliness, of good wooden furniture, and of the books that filled the shelves. It was an oasis of order after the emotional battlefield of Greenwood Hills. I sat on the sofa, hugging a cushion, as the earlier trembling turned into a deep exhaustion and a stinging indignation. I don't understand it, Mom. I began, my voice still shaky. Why? Why would she do this after all this time? Am I worth nothing to that family? The tears, this time of pure frustration and pain, welled up again. And Mitchell. God, Mitchell, not a word. He just stood there like a post. Does he not have a spine? Vivian sat beside me without touching me, letting me vent. Her silence was patient, like that of a surgeon waiting for the patient to list all the symptoms. It's my house, I continued, my voice rising. Our house. Where we raised the children, where we hosted our friends, where I spent sleepless nights worrying about bills. And now it's a gift. For Mason, who has never set foot in it for more than a meal or a swim in the pool. It's a mockery. It's emotional theft. I furiously wiped my eyes. I have to do something. I have to call a lawyer first thing tomorrow. This can't be. And what will you tell your lawyer, Audrey? Vivian asked then, her voice as calm as a lake's surface. That your 85-year-old mother-in-law said at a family dinner that she wants to gift a house to her grandson? What proof do you have beyond her words and your anger? I was speechless. Proof? She said it in front of everyone. Words in the wind, she said, shaking her head slowly. Emotions. Family drama. It's not a notarized document or a deed of gift. It's an announcement, probably calculated to provoke exactly this reaction from you. A visceral, uncontrolled reaction that casts you as the bad guy, the selfish one, the one who doesn't want the sweet grandmother to give a nice gift. Her cold, logical words hit me like a splash of icy water. Calculated. Of course, Vivian affirmed. Evelyn is not a fool. She knows the value of that house. She knows it's the biggest asset you have, and she knows that emotionally, it's your territory. By announcing it like that, in public, she forces you to react. If you yell, you lose. If you silently accept, you lose. It's a social checkmate. She paused meaningfully. Unless, I asked, drawn in by her reasoning. Unless we change the game board, she said, and her eyes glinted with a flash of cunning. She plays with emotions, with tradition, with family pressure. It's my wish. It's a gift. It's for the family. Pretty words. We have to play with something else. With facts, with paperwork, with numbers. With the law. She got up and went to her desk, returning with a notepad and a pen. Let's think, Audrey. Forget the gift for a moment. Let's talk about the house for what it is. A piece of real estate. A property with an economic history. It started with a mortgage, right? I nodded. Yes. Mitchell and I bought it 3 years after we got married. The mortgage is in both our names, but it's been paid off for 7 years now. Good. In both your names. Marital property, she noted. And the taxes? The property tax. I pay it, I said, recalling our earlier conversation. From my account, direct debit always. And the big bills? Renovations, major repairs. I rubbed my temples, trying to remember. The new kitchen 10 years ago came out of the joint account. But the roof, yes, I already told you. It was a huge bill, and Mitchell was having liquidity problems at his company. I used money from the sale of a piece of land my grandmother Beatrice left me. It was almost $80,000. Vivian calmly jotted down the figure. And the garden's irrigation system that broke with the frost last year? I paid for that too. With my credit card, it was easier. The pool, the complete rehabilitation? Yes, that was last summer too. Another $15,000. And the new furnace? The installation of air conditioning on the entire upper floor. Vivian kept asking, her pen moving without pause. Over and over I said, yes. Each yes made me feel a little colder, a little stranger. It was as if I were unearthing the bones of an animal I didn't know I had buried. Large amounts, medium amounts, sums that separately seemed like necessary household expenses, but gathered on my mother's list, began to form a different picture. And the general maintenance? The exterior paint, waterproofing the deck, replacing the blinds? She insisted. Mostly yes. Mitchell handles the lawn with the landscaper and some small fixes, but the big bills have almost always fallen on my side. He manages other expenses, the cars, insurance, family vacations. An uncomfortable feeling, a distant unease began to grow in my stomach. Mom, what are you implying? Vivian put down the pen and looked at me. I'm not implying. I'm stating. Based on what you're telling me, and without yet having all the paperwork, it seems you have been the main financier of the improvements and substantial maintenance of that property in recent years. With money that largely comes from your personal assets, from your inheritance. But it's our house, I replied weakly. It was logical to contribute. Contributing is one thing. Single-handedly taking on capital expenses that increase and maintain the value of the property, that's something else, she said softly. Evelyn has lived there for 25 years. Has she ever contributed any money? A bitter taste filled my mouth. No, never. She says her social security is small, that it's our obligation, that she's the grandmother, that we take care of our elders. It's tradition. Tradition, Vivian repeated, and the word sounded hollow in her mouth. A very convenient tradition for some. She lives for free in a house that you pay for, maintain, and improve with your money. And now, at the end of the road, she wants to decide the fate of that asset, gifting it to her other grandson, without consulting you, without acknowledging your investment, without asking your permission. She paused. That, Audrey, is not called giving a gift. That, if you want my opinion, looks a lot like a scam. Wanting to transfer an asset laden with moral, and who knows, maybe legal debts to the next generation while washing her hands of it. Debts. The word echoed in the room. Of course, Vivian said, tapping the notepad. If you've invested tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars of your own money in improving and maintaining a property that is legally half yours and half your husband's, that investment represents a right. A credit if you want to see it that way. Evelyn cannot give away what isn't entirely hers, and much less can she give it away without first settling the accounts of what that property has cost. And a very significant part of that cost was paid by you. The idea was revolutionary. To see the house not as a home, but as a series of transactions. To see my rage not just as an emotion, but as a claim for economic justice. But, is that legal? Can I claim that? That's what we're going to find out, Vivian said with determination. But first we need the ammunition. We need the proof. Not just your memory but bank statements, invoices, receipts. And we need to know the property's full history. Assessed value, taxes paid, building permits, everything. And how do we get all that? As I told you, she replied, standing up. Tomorrow we go to the county records office. We're going to request all publicly available information on that house. Then we'll review your bank accounts and the house accounts. We'll gather every paper, every transfer. We're going to build a dossier, Audrey. Not a scream of rage, but a file. A file that will prove in black and white that this gift has a price. A price that you have already largely paid. I looked at her, and for the first time since the announcement, I felt I wasn't a helpless victim. I felt I had a plan, a strategy. And after that? What do we do with that dossier? Vivian offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. After that, we'll use it. Not to shout, but to talk, to negotiate, or if necessary, to file a formal claim. Evelyn wants to play family chess. Fine. But we're not going to move an emotional pawn. We're going to move the queen of facts and the bishop of the law. She came over and put a hand on my shoulder. Your strength, honey, is not in how loud you can shout, but in how much you can prove. She has tradition and manipulation. We will have the numbers in the papers. We'll see which carries more weight when everything is on the table. I took a deep breath. The rage hadn't gone away, but now it was contained, focused, transformed into a cold determination. All right, Mom. All right. Tomorrow to the house of paper. Exactly, Vivian said, picking up the mugs. And now try to rest. The real work begins tomorrow. And when we have everything, then we will call our own family meeting. But this time it will be on our terms with our weapons. That night, as I settled into the bed of my old room in my mother's apartment, I couldn't help but think of Vivian's words. A gift laden with debt. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the helplessness slowly transform into a kind of anxious anticipation. Evelyn wanted to give away my house. Fine. But perhaps without knowing it, she was also about to give away a problem. A very big, very expensive problem. And I, thanks to my mother, was beginning to have the tools to prove it. The battle wasn't over. It had simply changed fields. And for the first time I felt I was on the right one. The next morning dawned cold and clear. The sky was an intense, deceptively serene blue. I dressed in formal clothes, a gray pantsuit and a white blouse, as if for a decisive business meeting. And in a way it was. Vivian was already ready, wearing an elegant coat and carrying a large handbag, big enough, I suppose, to hold documents. We didn't talk much during the drive downtown. The concentration was palpable. My mind replayed the invoices, the figures, the memories of each expenditure. Had I kept all the papers? Would the public records be on our side? Our stop was the county records office. The building was modern with cold lines, a world apart from the warm, conflict-ridden family atmosphere of the previous night. We're going to request a copy of the deed and a tax history report, Vivian said in a low voice as we took a number. And also the property tax receipts from the last few years, everything that's publicly accessible. Do you think there'll be anything unusual? I asked, a knot in my stomach. I don't know, but numbers never lie, Audrey. And numbers tell a story. When our number was called, Vivian took the lead, calmly and precisely explaining what we needed. She provided the property's parcel number, which thankfully I remembered. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with glasses, typed on her computer. The printer whirred and spat out several pages. With the documents in hand, we sat on a bench in the waiting area. Vivian flipped through the pages of the deed with expert fingers. Here it is, she murmured. Property registered in the names of Mitchell P. Miller and Audrey L. Hayes as marital property. Date of registration, 22 years ago. She looked up. Legally it's half yours. We already knew that. But look at this, she said, pointing to a section. No active mortgage liens. The mortgage was released 7 years ago, as you said. Good. Then she took the tax receipts, laying them out in chronological order. Look, the last 10 years the registered payer is your name, Audrey, and the direct debit bank account is yours, your personal one. This is consistent. I felt a small sense of relief mixed with a strange bitterness. There it was, on official paper. My contribution, year after year, to the house's upkeep. It's just the property tax, Mom. It's not a fortune. It's a data point. A data point that establishes a pattern, she replied. We have the assessed value history here too. The second stop was our own home, once Mitchell had left for work. Back in my home office the real work began. I took out my laptop and logged into my online banking. Vivian sat beside me with her notepad. Look for large transfers, Audrey. To construction companies, plumbers, HVAC specialists, pool companies. Or statements where you see significant credit card charges for those items. For hours we dove into my bank statements from the last 12 years. It was an exhausting and revealing journey through the financial history of my adult life. And with every transfer I located, with every scanned invoice I retrieved from my digital files, I had been quite meticulous. Thankfully, the picture became clearer and colder. Here, I said, my voice a bit hoarse. 8 years ago. Transfer to Roofing and Structures Incorporated, $78,400. Description. Complete replacement of roof and structure. Vivian wrote down the figure. From which account? From my personal account, the one with the inheritance money from Grandma Beatrice. Good. Keep going. 5 years ago. Total climate control. $52,300. Installation of central air conditioning on entire upper floor and main level. My personal account. From the same inheritance. Keep going. 3 years ago. Prestige pools. $15,200. Rehabilitation of pool basin and filtration system. The joint account. But look, the transfer was made from my personal account to the joint one right before, to cover it, because there wasn't enough liquidity in the joint account at the time. Vivian nodded, unfazed. Noted. Keep going. Over and over again. The new high-efficiency furnace. The electrical system upgrade to comply with new regulations. The replacement of all windows with double-paned models. The waterproofing of the main deck. Sums of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. The vast majority coming directly or indirectly from my personal funds, from capital my family had left me, not from the fruits of our joint work with Mitchell. When I finally looked up, my eyes tired from staring at the screen, I was faced with a list in Vivian's notepad that took my breath away. They weren't messy jottings, but an orderly column of dates, descriptions, and figures. At the bottom was a grand total. I looked at her, awaiting her verdict. My mother didn't look triumphant. She looked grave, like a judge who has seen the evidence. $220,000, Audrey, she said, her voice low but clear. $220,000 over a 12-year period that you have invested from your personal assets in capital improvements and major repairs on that house. That's not counting the annual property tax, which is another several thousand a year, also from your pocket. And not counting decoration, furniture, or minor maintenance expenses you may have also covered. The number floated in the air between us. $220,000. It was an obscene amount, an amount that, in the heat of the moment, I had never mentally tallied. My God, I breathed, sinking into the chair. It's insane. I didn't realize. They were just expenses that came up. Things that had to be done. And you did them, Vivian concluded. Because it's your home. Because you wanted the best for your family. Because Mitchell had his own financial commitments and you had the resources on hand. It's understandable. But now, Audrey, now those expenses cease to be an act of family love. They become an investment. A non-reimbursed contribution to a common asset. She pointed to the list. This figure, these papers, completely changed the nature of Evelyn's gift. She cannot pretend to freely gift an asset that has been substantially improved and maintained with money that doesn't belong to her son, but to you. Legally, this investment could give you the right to a reimbursement claim, or an increase in your percentage of ownership, based on the added value. It's a credit you hold against the property, so to speak. And Mitchell? What if Mitchell says it was a gift that I wanted to do it? I asked, a sudden doubt assailing me. Vivian offered a cold smile. There is no document proving a donation from you to the marital estate or to him. These are transfers and payments to suppliers for improvements on a common asset. In a divorce, this would be seriously considered in the division of assets. In an external donation, even more so. You are in a position of strength, honey. A position of legal and economic strength, not an emotional one. She stored all the papers in a ring binder she had brought. Evelyn wanted to give away the house. Fine. But this house, in its current state with its current value, is carrying a backpack. A backpack that weighs $220,000. Plus interest. Plus years of property tax. That backpack is yours. Either the backpack stays with the house, or someone has to pay you for it before the house changes hands. For the first time, a genuine smile, full of a bitter understanding, formed on my lips. So her generous gift would actually be inheriting a debt to me. Exactly, Vivian affirmed, closing the binder with a definitive snap. It's not a gift. It's the transfer of an asset with a hidden liability. And that liability has a name. Audrey Hayes. Now we know. We have the proof. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the manicured lawns of Greenwood Hills. The rage had completely mutated. Now I felt a strange calm, a glacial clarity. And now what, Mom? Do we show them? Do we drop this on the table at the next dinner? Vivian came to my side. Now, my dear daughter, now we call a family meeting. But not a dinner. A meeting on neutral ground or here in my house. And we won't go to shout. We will go to inform. To present facts. To make clear what the economic reality is behind your mother-in-law's beautiful gesture. She put a hand on my arm. You will be in control of the situation, Audrey. Because you'll have something they don't have. The truth backed by paper. Are you ready? I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold certainty that now inhabited me. The indignant victim had vanished. In her place was a woman with a dossier under her arm. Yes, Mom, I said, and my voice sounded firm, confident. I'm more than ready. I can't wait to see their faces. Vivian nodded, satisfied. Good. Then let's make the calls. Let it be tomorrow. The sooner the better. The element of surprise is still on our side. Her gaze was like steel. We're going to return their visit, Audrey. And this time we'll be bringing dessert. The meeting was convened in my mother's living room, a neutral, orderly space, free from the memories and emotional traps of the house. Vivian had prepared coffee and water, nothing more. This was not a social occasion. It was a briefing. I felt like an executive about to present a devastating quarterly report, my stomach in knots but my mind clear, chilled by the ring binder that rested on the coffee table, thick and potent. Mitchell was the first to arrive. He came alone, his face tense, avoiding my initial gaze. Audrey, this is too much. A meeting here? Mom is very offended. His tone was one of weary reproach. And I am very offended, Mitchell, I replied, keeping my voice calm. But today we're not talking about offenses. We're talking about numbers. Sit down. Vivian, impeccable and serene, served coffee without a word. Her mere presence was a retaining wall. Evelyn arrived on Alicia's arm, who supported her as if she were a frail, elderly queen walking to the scaffold. My mother-in-law wore a dark dress and an expression of deep, wounded resignation. Alicia shot me a look filled with contempt. I don't know what this drama is, Audrey, Evelyn said, sitting with affected slowness in the best armchair, symbolically claiming a position of authority. After your shameful display the other day, the least you could do is apologize, not stage more eccentricities. Mitchell made a move to speak, but Vivian raised her hand slightly. Good afternoon, Evelyn, Alicia. Thank you for coming. This isn't a drama. It's a necessary conversation. Audrey has something important to share with everyone regarding the house. Alicia snorted. More tantrums. Please. Mom has already made a beautiful, generous decision. This is pathetic. Ignoring her, I opened the binder. The sound of the elastic closure snapping open seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the room. I took out the first page, a copy of the property deed. Before we talk about gifts, generosity, or decisions, I began, and my voice sounded strangely calm in my own ears. I think it's important for all of us to be clear on the legal and economic situation of the house in Greenwood Hills, so there are no misunderstandings. Mitchell leaned forward, uneasy. Audrey, what are you doing? Clarifying things, dear, I said without looking at him. First, the property. It is registered in the names of Mitchell P. Miller and Audrey L. Hayes as marital property. That means half of it is legally mine. Any decision about it affects and requires both of us. I looked directly at Evelyn. It's not just your house, Evelyn, nor the family's house. It is 50% my house. Evelyn rolled her eyes. That's greed talking, child. Always thinking of what's yours. It's a home, not a stock share. Precisely. I continued, moving to the next page. The property tax receipts. A home has expenses like property tax. For the last 12 years, this tax has been systematically paid from my personal bank account. Here are the proofs. I slid the copies across the table toward them. Alicia glanced at them. So what? They're house expenses. That's normal. Normal, I repeated, would be for them to come from a joint account or for Mitchell and me to pay them equally. But that's not the case. It's my money paying this tax year after year. But this, I added, pulling out the summary list my mother and I had prepared, this is no longer normal. I took a breath. This was the core. In the last 12 years, the house has required a series of major improvements and repairs. Improvements that are not basic maintenance, but investments that have substantially increased and preserved its value. I began to read in a clear, monotone voice that sounded even colder in the silence that had fallen over the room. 8 years ago. Complete replacement of roof and structure. Cost, $78,000. $400. Paid by transfer from my personal account, from my grandmother Beatrice's inheritance. Mitchell turned pale. Audrey. At the time 5 years ago, I continued, not letting him interrupt. Installation of central air conditioning on the upper floor and in the living room. $52,300. Paid from my personal account. I looked at Alicia. The same air conditioning you enjoy so much when you visit in the summer, Alicia. Alicia opened her mouth but no sound came out. 3 years ago, complete pool rehabilitation $15,200. Before that, a new high-efficiency furnace, $12,700. Electrical system upgrade, $9,800. Window replacement, $18,500. I listed the items one after another, as Evelyn's expression shifted from indignation to disbelief, and then to a kind of cold, contained fury. Mitchell stared at the floor, his knuckles white as he gripped the arms of his chair. The total sum of these investments, made with funds from my personal assets, amounts to $220,000. I concluded, letting the final page fall onto the table with a dry slap. $220,000. Not counting the annual property tax or other minor expenses. Money that was mine, inherited from my family, and that went into an asset that is half my husband's. The silence was absolute, broken only by the ticking of my mother's wall clock. It was Evelyn who broke the spell. Her voice, once sweet and pitiable, was now a thread of ice. What are you trying to prove with this? This farce of numbers, Audrey? That you've put money into your own house? How magnanimous! Did you not live there? Did you not enjoy a new roof and air conditioning? They are house expenses, as Alicia said. Don't come to me now with a shopkeeper's ledger. They are not expenses, Evelyn, Vivian interrupted, her calm voice a perfect counterpoint. They are investments. Capital investments that have significantly increased the property's market value. Investments that, I repeat, were made with money that was not part of the marital estate, but to Audrey's separate property. In legal terms, this could be considered a refundable contribution, especially in the context of transferring the property to a third party. Alicia finally found her voice, sharp and defensive. This is insane. It's her house. It was her obligation to fix it. Now she's going to present a bill to her own family? How petty. Mom wants to give a beautiful gift to Mason and you turn it into this. A business. She turned to Mitchell. Mitch, please say something. This is outrageous. Mitchell raised his head, his face a living conflict. Audrey, these expenses. Yes. It's true. A lot came from your inheritance, and I'm truly grateful for that. But presenting it like this now. It seems like you're attacking the family. A stab of pain shot through my chest, but the coldness of the numbers sustained me. No, Mitchell, I'm not attacking. I'm informing. Your mother wants to give away the house, to give away an asset that is worth much more today than when we bought it, largely thanks to a $220,000 investment from my pocket. Not our pocket. My pocket. I looked him straight in the eye. If you want to give something away, first you must be its absolute owner. And this house is not just yours, and the part that is mine has been more than paid for by me. If it's given away, that investment, that credit still exists. Only now the debtor would no longer be you but Mason. Or to be precise, I said, turning to Alicia, whose face was growing pale, the person legally responsible for Mason until he comes of age would be you, Alicia. Alicia stood up, indignant. What? What are you implying? I don't owe you anything. I'm not implying anything, Vivian replied, maintaining her calm. I am establishing a fact. If the property is donated, the debt from the non-reimbursed investment does not disappear. It is transferred. You, as Mason's mother, would inherit, along with the house, the responsibility of reimbursing Audrey for her contributions. Or Audrey would have the right to claim that amount against the property, even placing a lien on it if necessary to collect. It was Vivian who had spoken, with a legal clarity that made the air tremble. Evelyn struck the floor with her cane. This is blackmail. A vile act. You two, mother and daughter, conspiring to ruin a gesture of pure love. Mitchell, are you going to let them speak like this, To threaten your mother and your nephew. Mitchell was torn. Mom, the numbers are real. Audrey put in that money. In those years the business was doing poorly, you know that. They are details. Evelyn shouted, finally losing her temper. She is your wife. What is hers is yours, and what is yours is the family's. You don't keep accounts like this. It's morally base. What is morally base is wanting to give away what isn't entirely yours, without consulting me, and without acknowledging what I've put in. I shot back, raising my voice for the first time, emotion briefly breaking my cold facade. What is morally base is calling me selfish for claiming what is just. After 25 years of putting up with your whims, and investing my inheritance in the roof that sheltered all of us. Where was your pure love when I was signing the checks for the roof, Evelyn? Or when I paid the property tax every year? I stopped panting. Vivian placed a gentle hand on my arm, a silent reminder. I took a deep breath, regaining control. I didn't come here to fight, I said more calmly. I came to put the cards on the table. You can give away your share, Evelyn, or what you consider your share. But my share and the investment behind it are not for sale, and certainly not for donation. Alicia stared at the papers scattered on the table as if they were snakes. The idea of inheriting not a house, but a debt of over $200,000 to me, must have flashed through her mind like terrifying lightning. Mom, she said, her voice much less confident, this is a mess. We can't. Mason can't. Evelyn looked at her, and for an instant, I saw something more than rage in my mother-in-law's eyes. I saw a hint of panic. The perfect plan, the magnanimous gesture, was turning into a legal and financial monster before her eyes. Mitchell stood up, running a hand through his hair. We need to think about this. Talk it over calmly. This is too much. Yes, Vivian said, gently gathering the documents. Think about it. Talk. Consult with whomever you need to consult. But know this. Audrey is not going to oppose a gesture of family generosity. She paused dramatically. She is only going to demand that before that gesture is finalized, the debt that this family asset owes her is settled. It's justice. Nothing more, nothing less. The meeting ended there, with a silence heavy with hostility and bewilderment. Evelyn and Alicia left almost without a goodbye, Alicia nearly dragging her mother, whose pride seemed to have shrunk several inches. Mitchell stayed for a moment, looking at me with a mixture of resentment and something that might have been forced admiration. I never thought you'd do this, Audrey, he murmured. And I never thought you'd let them do what they wanted to do, Mitchell, I replied, not yielding. Now at least we all know where we stand. When he left, I collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. My hands were trembling slightly. Vivian handed me a glass of water. You did very well, honey, she said with a shadow of a smile. You kept your cool when it mattered. You gave them the facts. Now the ball is in their court. And they have a problem. A $220,000 problem. I looked at the closed binder on the table. It was no longer just a pile of papers. It was a shield and a weapon. And for the first time I saw a path toward something that looked like justice. It wasn't a happy ending. It was the beginning of a battle. But at least for the first time I was fighting on equal terms. Or better. The tension in the following days was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mitchell had returned home, but it was like living with a sullen, distant ghost. Communication was reduced to monosyllables. His phone rang often, Evelyn and Alicia no doubt applying pressure. I, for my part, clung to the binder and the cold certainty of the numbers. It was my anchor in the emotional chaos. It was my mother who took the next decisive step. You've shown them the wound, she told me over the phone, her voice serene. Now you have to show them the potential infection, the law. They need to understand that this isn't a whim of yours, Audrey. It's legal reality. I've spoken to Preston. Preston Shaw was an old family friend, a lawyer specializing in civil and family law, with an impeccable reputation and a demeanor as dry as the legal briefs he drafted. He was not a man for drama. Vivian had explained the situation, and he had agreed to see all of us at his law firm downtown. Not as a mediator, he clarified, but to offer an objective view of the legal aspects involved. Getting everyone to attend was a small battle. Evelyn initially refused, speaking of blackmail and bad faith. But Alicia, whose initial fear had grown as she searched online for terms like right of reimbursement for improvements and donation with debt, must have pressured her. Mitchell, on the verge of exasperation, simply said, "Let's just go and get this over with." Preston's office was modern, minimalist, all straight lines and light wood, a place where emotions seemed out of place. He received us in a conference room with a large glass table. He took the head of the table in his impeccable suit and tortoiseshell glasses. We sat across from him, Mitchell and I on one side, Evelyn and Alicia on the other, separated by an invisible chasm. Vivian sat at one end observing. "Good afternoon," Preston began without preamble. "Vivian has given me a general overview of the family situation. To save time and avoid misunderstandings, I will objectively, and from a strictly legal standpoint, explain the legal implications of gifting a real estate asset under these circumstances." His tone was neutral, professorial. Evelyn cleared her throat. "Preston, this is all a misunderstanding. It's a simple gift from a grandmother to her grandson. I don't see why it needs to be made so complicated." Preston looked at her over his glasses. "Evelyn, it is precisely to avoid legal action that it is wise to understand the legal framework. Let's start with the basics." He picked up a notepad. "The property, according to the documentation Audrey has provided, is held by both spouses as marital property. That means each of them owns 50%. For you to gift it, you would first need the express consent of both. Especially," he added, looking at Mitchell, "if the gift is intended for a third party, in this case your grandson, who is not a direct descendant of both owners." Mitchell shifted in his chair. "She's my mother, Preston. It's a family gesture." "Family law recognizes gestures," Preston said dryly, "but it also protects marital property. If you, without Audrey's consent or vice versa, tried to gift your undivided share, she could challenge the gift and would have a very high chance of winning. That would be the first hurdle." Alicia shot him a look of exasperation. "But if she refused, she'd be petty." "It's her right, but it would be horrible." Preston ignored the comment. "Let's assume, hypothetically, that both spouses agreed to the gift. We then enter the fiscal realm." He paused, letting the word land like a slab of stone. "A gift of a property of this value is subject to the federal gift tax. The donor, which is you, Evelyn, would be responsible for filing a gift tax return. While you likely wouldn't owe tax out of pocket due to the lifetime exemption, it's a formal legal step you cannot ignore, and it reduces the amount you can pass on tax-free upon your death. It's a significant financial event." Evelyn paled slightly. I wasn't aware." "Most people aren't," Preston nodded. "But that's not all," the lawyer continued, moving into even murkier territory. "There is the issue of separate property contributions to a marital asset. Audrey has provided documentation proving very substantial investments in the property with funds from her separate, inherited assets." He looked at Mitchell. "In the event of the dissolution of the marriage, in a divorce for example, those contributions are taken into account. They can give rise to a right to compensation, reimbursement, or an increase in the share attributable to Audrey, creating a credit she holds against the property itself." Mitchell went ashen. "A credit? Are you saying my wife has a debt to me?" "No," Preston corrected him. "I'm saying that the marital estate of which you are a part has a debt to Audrey for the value of those improvements, as they were made with money that was not part of the common pool. In a divorce proceeding, a judge would strongly consider this in the division of assets. But, and this is important, and here he raised his voice slightly, it could also be considered in an inter vivos transfer, such as a gift. Audrey could oppose the gift, arguing for the reimbursement of that amount first, or she could subsequently claim that debt from the new owner. That is, from Mason once the gift is complete, with all accrued interest from the date of each expenditure." The blow was brutal. Alicia let out a muffled gasp. "What? My son? Mason would have to pay her?" She pointed a trembling finger at me. That's outrageous." "It's the law, Alicia," Preston said with implacable calm. "You cannot transfer assets without assuming the potential liens and debts attached to them. And this investment, duly documented, constitutes a very serious potential lien. A skilled lawyer in court would defend that credit with little difficulty. It's family money. Evelyn burst out, her dignity cracking. She is my son's wife. What's hers is his. That is a moral concept, Evelyn, not a legal one, Preston replied. The law distinguishes between marital property and separate property. Audrey's inheritance money is separate property, and if that separate property is used to improve a marital asset, a right of reimbursement is created. He paused, looking at each of us. What we have here in summary is the following. For this gift to proceed you need 1. The consent of both spouses, which is not certain. 2. You must deal with the federal gift tax implications. And 3. You must resolve the issue of the debt to Audrey, which, according to the documentation presented, amounts to more than $220,000, plus possible interest. Otherwise, Audrey could oppose the gift, or allow it and then execute her credit against the new owner, placing a lien on the property if necessary to collect. The cold, clear description turned the room into an ice chamber. Evelyn's beautiful gesture had transformed, under the frigid light of the law, into a labyrinth of tax obligations, hidden debts, and enormous legal risks. Alicia looked at her mother in a panic. Mom, this is insane. We can't. Mason can't inherit a debt like that. We don't have that kind of money. Evelyn seemed to have shrunk in her chair. Her pride, her authority, deflated before the relentless legal logic. There would be ways. Alone. Against what? Preston asked. If the house is gifted, it's not yours to mortgage. If it's mortgaged before gifting, the debt is gifted with the house. And Mason or you for him would have to pay that mortgage. The burden would be even greater. Mitchell had buried his face in his hands. My God, he murmured. This is a nightmare. It's reality, Mitchell, Preston said, not without a certain harshness. What you and your mother saw as an affectionate gesture, the law sees as a complex property transaction with tax, family law, and liability implications. Ignoring the law doesn't make it disappear. It only worsens the consequences. I looked around at Alicia, terrified by the burden looming over her son. At Evelyn, crumbling, watching her plan for posthumous control turn into a living nightmare. At Mitchell, trapped between his mother and the harsh reality I had brought to the table. I felt no joy. I felt a vast emptiness and a deep sadness, but also a firm determination. This wasn't my fault. It was the consequence of their own arrogance, of their attempt to dispose of what was mine without my consent. Preston closed his notepad. My advice as a lawyer and a family friend is that you think this over very, very carefully. And if you decide to proceed, you will need, at a minimum, a notarized agreement between all parties. You, Evelyn, the two of you, Audrey and Mitchell, and you, Alicia, representing Mason. An agreement that establishes who handles the gift tax, and above all, how and when Audrey's investment is reimbursed. Otherwise, you're looking at years of litigation, legal fees, and a much deeper family fracture. He stood up, indicating the meeting was over. Think about it. And if you need to draft that agreement, you know where to find me. But do it with all the information on the table. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. We left the law firm in a silence even heavier than the one that had accompanied us on arrival. The shadow of the law, long and cold, now loomed over all of us. And within it, my credit of $220,000 shone like a sword of Damocles, ready to fall on the generous gift. Evelyn no longer looked ahead with pride. She looked at the ground, defeated. And Alicia, helping her mother by the arm, shot me a look that was no longer contempt, but genuine fear. The silence in the car on the way home was more eloquent than any argument. Mitchell drove with his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on the road as if he could bore a hole through it. The tension was an oppressive, uncomfortable third passenger. Not even the radio dared to turn on. Upon entering the house, that now poisoned entity, the atmosphere was glacial. The furniture, the walls, the memories on the shelves, everything seemed to watch me with reproach. Mitchell threw the keys onto the entryway table with a metallic clatter and went straight to the kitchen, pouring himself a neat whiskey without offering me any. I took off my coat, moving slowly, feeling the weight of the day in my bones. The confrontation at Preston's office had been a tactical victory, but emotionally I felt empty, like after a pitched battle where, despite winning, you have seen the cost in lives. Mitchell appeared in the kitchen doorway, glass in hand, his face, once a conflict, now pure accusation. "Are you satisfied?" he said, his voice thick with bitterness. "Happy to have humiliated them like that? To have backed my mother into a corner in front of a stranger? To have scared my sister to the point of panic? Is that what you wanted?" The fatigue evaporated, replaced by a cold, renewed anger. Humiliated them? Me, Mitchell? What world are you living in? Who tried to humiliate whom? Who announced in front of the whole family that they were going to give away my house, our house, without even consulting me? Is that not humiliation? "It's not your house, it's our house," he shouted, slapping the doorframe with his palm. The sound echoed in the empty living room. "And it's been my mother's home for 25 years. She has the right to feel it's her home, to want to leave a legacy. A legacy that doesn't belong to her." I yelled back, advancing toward him. "A legacy that we paid for, that we maintained, and that I improved with my own money. Where were you when I was signing $80,000 checks, Mitchell? Where was your sense of family then? Or does it only appear when your mother is handing out what isn't hers?" "That money was for the house," he said, but his voice lost its force. "It was the right thing to do. The right thing would have been for us to discuss it. The right thing would have been, if I was using my inheritance, for it to be clear it was a contribution, not a gift. The right thing would have been for you to defend your wife when your mother decided on her own to dispose of half of what is mine." Tears of rage blurred my vision. "But no, you never have. You always put her wishes, her whims, her suffocating tradition first. And I'm the outsider, the one who causes problems, the one who doesn't understand family unity, right?" Mitchell finished his whiskey and slammed the glass down on a table. "It's not that. It's just, God, Audrey, you can't just pull out a $200,000 bill after all these years. Sounds like blackmail. It seems like everything you did for this family, for this house, you did with a calculator in your hand." The pain of his words was physical. "Do you really believe that?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Do you really think that when I fixed the roof because it was raining in your children's bedroom, I was thinking about a future lawsuit? When I installed air conditioning because your mother was suffering in the heat, was I planning this?" I shook my head, an infinite sadness drowning the rage. "I did it because it was our home, because I wanted us to be comfortable. What hurts, Mitchell, isn't having spent the money. What hurts is that when the moment of truth comes, you don't see that sacrifice. You only see a number that complicates your life with your mother." He ran a hand through his hair, turning away, unable to meet my gaze. "It's not that. It's just, putting it like this, with lawyers, with threats of taxes and debts, you've turned something beautiful into something dirty. Into a business deal." "They turned it into a business deal," I exclaimed, exasperated. "Gifting a house is a huge financial act, not a sweet gesture from Granny. It involves taxes, legal consequences, obligations. What I did was turn on the light so everyone could see the cockroaches under the rug of their beautiful gesture. The cockroaches are called injustice, contempt for me, and willful ignorance of the law. We could have talked about it as a family," he insisted weakly, "without lawyers." "And what would have happened, Mitchell?" I asked, stepping closer. "Would your mother have given up her plan if we had asked her nicely? Or would she have used her entire arsenal of emotional blackmail, calling me selfish, unfriendly, a family wrecker, while you stood by silently as always? Would Alicia have accepted that her son wasn't getting the house? No. This needed cold facts. It needed the law, because the law at least doesn't play favorites." There was a long silence. The ticking of the living room clock marked the beats of a marriage that was cracking apart. "So what do you want me to do?" he finally asked, his voice tired. "Turn my back on my mother? Confront her? She's 85, Audrey." "I don't want you to turn your back on anyone," I said, and it was the truth. "I want you to face me for once. I want you, in the face of this madness, to say no. To say, this house belongs to Audrey and me, and we are not just giving it away. To demand alongside me that if something is to be done, it's done right, acknowledging what I've put in. To support me, not as my lawyer, but as my husband." Mitchell sank into an armchair, his head in his hands. "If I side with you, it will be a war. An open war. With my mother, with Alicia. The family will be destroyed. The family is already destroyed, Mitchell, I whispered, feeling the weight of that truth. What your mother did by announcing that gift without consulting us was to dynamite the foundations. The only thing we can choose now is which rubble to stand on, the rubble of her whim and our submission, or the rubble of justice and respect, even if it's painful. It's not fair to put me in the middle, he murmured. But you're always in the middle, I burst out, losing my patience. And you always end up falling on her side. This time, Mitchell, this time the choice is clear, and it has consequences. I paused, taking a deep breath, preparing to play the last card, the one my mother and I had discussed in private. Preston made it clear. If this gift goes ahead without resolving my credit, I have very serious legal options. I could oppose it outright, or I could allow it and then claim my debt from Mason, or foreclose on the house to collect. It would be a long, ugly, and expensive process for everyone. But there is another option. He looked up, waiting. The other option, I said with a calm I didn't feel, is for you and I to come to an agreement. A real one. For us to demand together that before any gift, my investment is reimbursed, with interest if necessary. That the money comes from wherever it has to come from, the sale of your mother's other assets, a loan that Alicia takes on, whatever. But that I am paid. And if it can't or won't be done, then the gift doesn't happen. And if my mother insists and I side with you? He left the sentence hanging in the air. Then, I concluded, my heart constricting, then you and I will have to decide what to do with our half of the house. Because I will not live in a place my mother-in-law thinks she can give away like a vase. And I will not stay in a marriage where my husband is incapable of defending what is ours, what is mine, from his family. The threat, though veiled, hung in the air. Divorce. The word was unspoken, but present in every glance, in every heavy silence. Mitchell looked at me, and for the first time, I saw more than resentment or discomfort in his eyes. I saw fear. Fear of losing everything. His mother, his sister, family, peace. But also perhaps fear of losing me, and of losing half an estate that, without my investment, would be worth much less. Preston had also made it clear that in a divorce, my contributions would play heavily in my favor. Don't ask me to choose between my family and you, he said, his voice breaking. I'm not, I replied, feeling a part of me harden so it wouldn't break. I'm asking you to choose between injustice and justice. Between your mother's whim and your wife's rights. Between continuing to be a child who obeys, or a man who protects what's his. Our home. Our future. The night fell upon us, full of broken silences and averted glances. Mitchell gave no answer that night. He shut himself in his office. I went to bed alone in the marital bed that now felt like a cold battlefield. But the next day, as the sun filtered through the blinds, I found a message on my phone. It was from Mitchell, sent at 5 a.m. Brief, dry, like a dispatch from the front. I spoke to Mom. I told her the gift as planned is unfeasible. That we have to resolve the issue of your investment first. She didn't like it, but she said she'll talk to Alicia. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't fervent support. It was a surrender to the evidence, motivated perhaps more by fear of the legal and financial consequences than by a sudden sense of justice. But it was a step. The first step in which, for the first time in 25 years, Mitchell had not automatically sided with his mother. I read it over and over. There was no relief, no joy. Just a bittersweet sense of a Pyrrhic victory. I had won the battle by forcing my husband to choose a side with the weight of the law and the numbers. But the war for our marriage, for respect, for a future in which I didn't feel like a stranger in my own life, that war had just begun. And the price of this first skirmish already felt cold and heavy in the emptiness of my bed. Evelyn's call came 2 days later. Her voice on the other end of the line no longer held its tone of pitiable authority, but the coldness of someone negotiating from a weak position. She wanted to talk at my house. Just her, Alicia, Mitchell, and me. My mother, she said with a hint of resentment, was not necessary. Of course. I hung up and called Vivian. You'll go, she told me without hesitation. But you won't go alone. And it won't be at your house. It will be on neutral ground at my apartment. And I will be present. If they want to talk negotiations, let them talk to all the parties. Or at least with your advisor. In the end they gave in. The meeting in my mother's living room had the tense air of a fragile truce. Evelyn and Alicia arrived together, but the solidarity of their family block seemed fractured. Alicia avoided her mother's gaze, and Evelyn's eyes were swollen as if she hadn't slept. Mitchell sat in a corner like a punished student, staring at his hands. Vivian, as hostess, offered coffee. No one touched it. "I've thought about what was said," Evelyn began without preamble, directing her words more to Mitchell than to me. "And I understand that the situation Audrey has presented complicates things. It was not my intention to cause problems." The words sounded rehearsed, bitter. "We can reach an agreement. Compensation. A symbolic amount for the improvements, so the gift to Mason can go forward." I looked at Vivian. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "No. A symbolic amount does not cover $220,000, Evelyn," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "And it doesn't cover the interest or the fact that I've paid the property tax for years. This is not a matter of symbols. It's a matter of justice." Alicia couldn't contain herself. "Justice? This is extortion. You're using legal technicalities to ruin my son's future." "Your son's future shouldn't be built on what is mine, Alicia," I replied without losing my composure. "That's not a gift. It's a transfer of debt." Evelyn took a deep breath, reining in her anger. "What do you want then, Audrey? Money I don't have? For me to sell my jewelry, my savings? Is that what you want, to put an old woman out on the street?" The old emotional blackmail. But it no longer had the same effect. "I don't want to put you on the street, Evelyn. I want it to be acknowledged once and for all that this house is not just yours to dispose of, and that if you want to give it away, all the owners and all the creditors must agree." Mitchell raised his head. "Mom, Audrey is right. We can't. It's not fair." Evelyn shot him a withering look, and he lowered his eyes again. The fracture between mother and son was now palpable and painful for both. It was then that Vivian spoke. She had remained silent until now, observing. Her voice, calm and clear, cut through the tension like a scalpel. "I believe," she said, setting her coffee cup down gently, "that you are all approaching the problem from the wrong angle." We all looked at her. "You are fighting over how to block or permit the gift," she continued, "when the real power lies not in saying yes or no." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The real power, Audrey, is in saying yes, but..." I frowned. "Yes, but?" Vivian nodded, and a faint smile, full of serene intelligence, played on her lips. "Exactly. Opposing it outright makes you the villain, the one who denies a grandmother's gift to her grandson. It's an emotionally weak position, even if it's legally strong. It allows them to paint you as greedy." She looked at Evelyn, then at Alicia. "But what if you don't oppose it? What if you magnanimously accept the gift?" Alicia blinked, confused. Evelyn looked at me with suspicion. Mitchell seemed lost. "I don't understand," I said, genuinely perplexed. "You accept the gift," Vivian repeated patiently, "but with conditions. Very clear conditions, set down in a binding notarized agreement signed by all parties. You, Mitchell, Evelyn, and Alicia as Mason's legal representative." "What conditions?" Evelyn asked, her voice laden with suspicion. Vivian leaned forward, lacing her fingers. "First, the gift is made of the property as is, but with the express acknowledgement of the outstanding debt. That is, Mason and his legal representative, Alicia, agree to receive the property, but they also accept the obligation to reimburse Audrey for the totality of the investments made with her separate assets, plus legal interest calculated from the date of each expenditure. A sum that, rounding up, we could set at, for example, $250,000 to cover interest and costs." Alicia turned waxen pale. "That's insane. We don't have that money." "The second condition," Vivian continued unperturbed, "establishes a comfortable payment term, let's say 10 years with a monthly installment plan. Or alternatively," here she paused dramatically, "a lien is placed on the property in Audrey's favor for that amount. A lien that would be activated if the installments are not paid, which would mean that in case of default, Audrey could initiate foreclosure proceedings. She could, in practice, take the house to collect her debt." The silence was absolute. Even I was breathless, grasping the genius and diabolical harshness of the plan. Are you turning the gift into a trap? Evelyn murmured, horrified. No, Vivian corrected her softly. I'm turning a unilateral and problematic gesture into a transparent and legal transaction. Mason receives a very valuable property, but he assumes its obligations, like any heir who receives an asset with debts. Audrey, for her part, has her right recognized and obtains security for collecting what is hers. It's fair for everyone. But he's a boy. Alicia protested, almost in tears. He can't go into debt like that. You would be responsible while he's a minor, Vivian said with relentless logic. And when he's an adult, it will be his debt. A debt in exchange for a luxury house in Greenwood Hills. Many young people would sign up for that debt. It's an opportunity, Alicia, but with a real cost, not a gift fallen from the sky. I looked at my mother, and a wave of admiration mixed with a chill ran through me. It was ruthless. It was brilliant. Instead of fighting the gift, she was accepting it and loading it with so much weight that it became something else entirely. It was no longer an act of generosity, but a complicated and risky financial transaction. A gift that could ruin Mason and Alicia if they weren't careful. And the third condition, Vivian added as a finishing touch, is that the gift tax filing and any potential liability, as Preston explained, be fully assumed by the donating party. That is, by you, Evelyn, or if you cannot, by Alicia as the indirect beneficiary. That would also be put in writing, so there are no surprises from the IRS. Evelyn seemed to have shrunken in her armchair. Her plan, her grand gesture of love and posthumous control, had transformed under Vivian's cold lens into a three-headed monster. A gigantic debt for her favorite grandson, an overwhelming tax liability for herself or her daughter, and the certainty that I, the daughter-in-law she had always despised, would hold immense legal power over the property for years. No, I can't accept that, Evelyn said, but her voice lacked force. It was the murmur of a defeated general. Then there is no gift, Vivian concluded with a shrug. Audrey and Mitchell keep the property, and life goes on. But if you insist on the gesture, these are the conditions for Audrey to give her consent. They are non-negotiable. They are the price for trampling on her rights. I turned to Mitchell. His face was a mask of disbelief. Mom, he said hesitantly, you can't ask Mason to start his adult life with a $250,000 mortgage. It's insane. For the first time I saw Evelyn truly hesitate, not for me, but for the weight her gift would place on her beloved Mason. Alicia looked at her mother with a mixture of pleading and reproach. The gift no longer seemed so wonderful. We need to think about it, Evelyn said, standing, swaying slightly. Alicia supported her by the arm. Of course, Vivian said with a kindness that sounded like victory. Take your time. But know that without a notarized agreement containing these conditions, Audrey will not sign any consent for the gift. And without her signature, and Mitchell's, it cannot be done. It's as simple as that. When they left, the silence in the living room was different. It was no longer tense, but charged with a new energy. Mitchell looked at me. Is this what you want, Audrey? He asked, his voice hoarse. To put my nephew, my sister, into debt? What I wanted, I said with a fatigue that reached my soul, was for them not to give away my house without my permission. What your mother wants is to make a gesture that makes her look good, regardless of the consequences for others. Your sister wants a free house for her son. What my mother has done is put the real cost of that whim on the table. It's not my fault the cost is so high. I stepped closer to him. They have a choice, Mitchell. Accept the gift with its real conditions or renounce it. I have already made mine. Mitchell said nothing. He left the room, leaving me alone with my mother. Vivian came over and put a hand on my shoulder. Are you all right? I took a deep breath. Yes. It's so cold, so calculated. Sometimes justice is cold, honey, she said. And against people who only understand emotions and possessions, it's the only language that works. Now the ball is in their court. And the ball, my dear Audrey, weighs $250,000. We'll see if they still want to play. I looked out the window, watching Alicia's car drive away. The gift was no longer a gift, it was a time bomb. and my mother had placed the timer in their hands. For the first time, I didn't have to fight. I just had to wait and see if they were brave enough to accept the consequences of their own generosity. And a part of me, a small part, already knew the answer. The country club ballroom smelled of expensive flowers, freshly baked hors d'oeuvres, and tension disguised as joy. The guests, Mason's friends, schoolmates, and the presentable part of the family, milled about with glasses in hand, ignorant of the earthquake that had preceded this celebration. The gold and silver balloons, the colors of Mason's favorite football team, seemed like frivolous bubbles floating over an abyss. I arrived on Mitchell's arm, a gesture of forced unity, a tacit armistice for the public. He wore a rigid smile. I wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress. I was not going to appear as the villain of the play. I was going to be the serene lady, the one who watches from the shore. My mother, Vivian, was already there, conversing with a distant cousin with astonishing naturalness. She gave me an almost imperceptible wink when she saw me. Evelyn, a living throne of pearl gray silk, presided over a small group near the cake. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes, which looked like two small, tired black raisins. Alicia at her side was pale, her laugh too loud, her movements nervous. And then there was Mason, the star at 18, impeccable in his new suit, surrounded by friends, still unaware of the package he was about to receive. The dinner passed in a blur of clattering silverware and banal conversations. I noticed the furtive glances from the family. Some knew there had been trouble, but not the details. Mitchell barely spoke to me. He drank more wine than usual. I maintained a polite conversation with a cousin's wife, talking about the weather, about how quickly the children were growing. Then came the time for speeches. Mason's father, Trevor, a man always a bit in his wife's shadow, offered a few clumsy, affectionate words. Mason's friends made jokes. And then Evelyn stood up. An expectant, slightly forced silence fell over the room. Everyone knew the matriarch was going to speak. She adjusted her stole and took the microphone a waiter offered her. Her voice, a little shaky but clear, echoed in the hall. "Dear friends, family, my beloved Mason." She paused, searching for the words. There was no triumph in her tone anymore. There was resignation and something that might have been bitterness. Today is a very special day. My eldest grandson becomes a man. And to mark this occasion, I wanted to give him a gift. A gift that comes from the bottom of my heart, and that I hope will be the foundation of his future. I saw Alicia clutch the napkin in her lap until her knuckles turned white. Mitchell lowered his gaze to his wine glass. "I have always believed," Evelyn continued, "that family is everything. That what we have to share, to help one another." Her eyes swept the room and for an instant locked onto mine. There was no love in that gaze, only a cold acknowledgement of defeat. "That is why I have decided, with the blessing and agreement of the entire family, of course." This time the pause was longer, as if the words burned her tongue. "To give to Mason the ownership of the house on Maple Drive, where I have had the joy of living so many happy years." A murmur of admiration rippled through the guests. Some whispered, "How generous! An incredible gift." Mason, blushing and visibly overwhelmed, smiled, uncomfortable but flattered. Evelyn took a deep breath, like a swimmer before diving into icy water. "But," she said, and that tiny word cut through the murmur like a knife, "as in life, the most valuable gifts often come with responsibilities. The house is a valuable property, and as such it has its commitments." The room was utterly silent. The guests looked around, confused. "Commitments? For this transfer to be fair to everyone," Evelyn continued, now reading from a paper she had taken from her purse, "the notarized agreement we had reluctantly signed the week before, and in recognition of the significant improvements and care the property has received over the years, we have established certain terms." Her voice became monotonous, legalistic, stripping the act of any remaining warmth. "Mason, in accepting the property, also assumes the commitment to reimburse, in comfortable installments over the coming years, the investments made in it by his Aunt Audrey. Investments that have been vital to maintaining and increasing its value." The murmur now was one of confusion. People looked around, searching for clues. Mason blinked, his smile vanishing. "Reimburse?" he muttered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Yes, my love. Evelyn said, and for the first time her voice showed a flicker of real emotion, a hint of remorse. It's part of the responsibility of being a property owner, assuming the obligations associated with the asset. Your Aunt Audrey has been very understanding in establishing a long-term payment plan. The words understanding and Aunt Audrey sounded as fake as a $3 bill. Furthermore, she added, rushing, as part of the agreement, the tax responsibilities associated with this gift will be handled by the family, so that your start in adult life is not too burdened. The presentation of the gift was over. There was no applause. There was an uncomfortable silence, broken by a few coughs and the sound of a glass someone set down too forcefully on a table. Mason looked at his grandmother, then at his mother, then at me. His expression of teenage confusion was slowly transforming into something closer to horror. He hadn't received a gift. He had received a mortgage, a gigantic responsibility, an asset that came with a millstone of debt around its neck. Alicia could hold it in no longer. She stood up with a forced smile that was a grimace of pain. Everyone. A toast to Mason. And to the family's generosity. She raised her glass, but her hand trembled slightly. The guests, polite but bewildered, raised their glasses and murmured a half-hearted to Mason. The music started again, a failed attempt to recapture the joy. Mason was surrounded by his friends who clapped him on the back, but their questions, "Dude, they gave you a house with a debt? That's crazy," were awkward, laden with a youthful incomprehension of the complexities of the adult world. I stayed in my seat observing. I saw Evelyn sink into her chair, exhausted, the crumpled agreement in her hand. The grand gesture of her life had become a cold, contractual announcement that left her favorite grandson not with an estate, but with an obligation. And the worst part for her, everyone had seen it. Her authority, her role as the generous matriarch, had crumbled in public. Mitchell went to his mother, placing a hand on her shoulder. She didn't look at him. Alicia walked away toward the bar, seeking another drink, her face a mask of contained rage. Then I felt a presence beside me. It was Vivian. She stood next to me, following my gaze to the center of the room, where Mason was trying, unsuccessfully, to look happy. "Well," she murmured without looking at me, taking a shrimp puff from a passing waiter's tray. "Now everyone knows the real price of things." I looked at her. In her calm gray eyes there was no triumphalism. There was a deep, serene satisfaction. The satisfaction of one who has played a difficult game and won, not by luck but by strategy. There was no need for grandiloquent words, for showy gestures. The simple announcement, made in public with the conditions laid bare, had been her checkmate. "Yes," I said, and I noticed a small but genuine smile form on my lips for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was the smile of someone who has reclaimed control, of someone who is no longer a pawn on another's chessboard. Now they know. I looked at Evelyn, diminutive and defeated in her chair. I looked at Alicia, drinking her anger at the bar. I looked at Mitchell, trying to console a mother who would never see him with the same eyes again. And I looked at Mason, the boy who had wanted a gift and had received a life lesson. The gift no longer belonged to anyone. Or it belonged to everyone, entangled in paperwork, debts, and resentments. But my share, my investment, my credit was secure, protected by the law and by the agreement that everyone now knew about. The house would never again be the symbol of Evelyn's dominion. It would be a reminder that even the most generous gestures have a cost, and that some debts, both moral and economic, are always paid in the end. Vivian passed me another shrimp puff. "Eat something, honey. The show is over." And it was. There were no more speeches, no more announcements. Just the fake noise of a party dragging on out of inertia. But the balance of power in the family had shifted forever. And I, Audrey, was no longer the daughter-in-law who kept silent. I was the creditor. And that, in this new world of appearances and clear accounts, was a much more comfortable position to be in. I brought the appetizer to my lips. It tasted of victory and also just a little of ashes. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.